Well, Lindsay, thank you so much for doing this. I mean, you do amazing trainings, and I gave you a shout out actually this morning on LinkedIn because our company meeting yesterday when you talked about reverse offers, and it's crazy because my brother, like when I talked about it in a story yesterday, my brother's like, yeah, I've done a couple of them. I had never done it. I've never heard of it. And so it just goes to show how much we have to learn from each other. So I'm personally in the CMA training, even though I've been in the business for 11 years, because I know that I still can learn something. And so whether you're a new agent that wants to learn how to build a CMA from the ground up to somebody that, I mean, I consider myself an expert. I want to see how you do it because I'm sure I'm going to pick up some awesome tips. So thanks for doing this, Lindsay.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that because our world has changed as we know it. Our complete um we had COVID, we had a crazy seller's market, we had a buyer's market, and almost the majority of everyone I know was taught the exact same basic way to do a CMA. And it's like the whole world of real estate has changed. Our buyers and sellers have changed. Our lending opportunities have changed. Our marketing strategies have changed. So, why is a core foundation of how we come up with our strategies? Why hasn't it been updated? So, I want to go back and just let everybody know that one, change is okay. Also, two, this is not something that top producing agents are screaming from the rooftops. Putting together a strategy, which the CMA is a part of, a solid strategy is how an agent wins over buyers and sellers. That's how your competition beats you. So I'm excited as a top producing agent, as an agent that has to, by default, my CMAs are very complicated. Because I sell farm and ranch, because I sell commercial, there's a lot of data and there's a lot more in there. So what it's helped me to do is help agents in all different types of real estate platforms look at the CMA as a different type of tool and enhance their overall strategy. So what I want to go back to is how to build a winning CMA based on the real market and hidden data. The funny thing is the data I'm going to talk about isn't hidden. It's just not something you've been told to look for or maybe how to look for it. The other thing I'm going to talk about is the real market. What is the market doing right now? Because the CMA is time stamped from the day that you do it. I mean, let's face it. Majority of people will say, well, I just did one CMA. I'm like, okay, well, you've been on the market 6 months. Depending on your market, it depends really on your market. If your market's changing that fast, if you had a change in the market, there could be 60 days where your CMA has gone dramatically up or dramatically down in its data points. So I want us to focus on what is the real market. And this is really important because all of you can testify. Over the past 6 years, we have been through multiple markets. So the CMA starts with the goals of the client. It doesn't start with the MLS. It doesn't start with how many square feet is the property and what's the neighborhood. It starts with the goals of the client because the goals of the client are going to change the way you position and evaluate the data you grab. So I always say, ask the client first. And also, too, it's not just the client, it's the timing. What's the expected negotiations? What are the lending goals? Let's face it, guys, everybody is panicking over lending right now. So that has to be a core factor in this conversation and in this evaluation. And then also to your marketing restrictions. Some of y'all belong to marketplaces that won't allow you to do certain marketing strategies. Other when I talk about marketplaces, most people used to call that the MLS. Well, now we don't just have a standard board MLS. We have open marketplace MLSs. So we have homes.com, we have Zillow, we have your own private websites, we have your own private marketing tools. So when I talk about marketplaces, it's all the places that your listing is going to be, or where your buyers are going to be searching, because the CMA goes both ways, right? So the role of a CMA today, it's a part of the whole plan. Back in the day, we used to pull the CMA and be like, here's your high, low, medium, let's go medium. And that's the price we slapped on it. That no longer applies. The CMA is a positioning tool. It's not value. A lot of states out there that I'm speaking to today, we got hammered by our state commissions. The only people that can talk about value in the state of Texas are appraisers. This is a pricing opinion, a market opinion. So it is a positioning tool. It helps ground expectations. So really, when you put that CMA, the client gets to see the full picture over that full time frame. It drives your marketing strategy. Because let me tell you how we're going to talk about putting together the CMA. Back in the day, like I said, we picked that average price, and that's what we stuck with. Well, whatever the average was, that's what your list price should be. That's what your brokers used to and trainers used to teach us. It's going to drive how you do your marketing, and it is not the sales price. And also, too, it's going to probably give you what we're going to show here in a little bit is multiple strategies and maybe multiple marketing prices. It sets a timestamp for expectations. This is really important. Sandy is actually on the call. The CMA is actually, we joke and say, is your CYA. If there is a situation to where a transaction is under review on a high level, maybe as an ethics complaint and things of that nature, it's really hard if that complaint comes up 3 years or a lawsuit comes up 3 years from when you sold that house. You know how hard it is to go back and find past data to timestamp what was really going on in that market? So it's not just timestamping expectations for the client, but also timestamping an expectation for your file and if it goes under review. And I know some of y'all here have heard Sandy's story about how that CMA actually helped her in that scenario because it proved what was really going on the market and what was truly fact at that day and time. CMAs and marketing analysis are exactly that. They're estimates and analysis. They're not appraisals. If your client wants to know exactly what their home is worth, you need to be more comfortable with saying, you know what? You have a beautiful property. It's one of a kind. It really is. You know, if you want the true pricing strategy, if you want to know what it's worth, let's go talk to an appraiser. And to be honest with you, appraisers are not that expensive. And having that peace of mind of knowing that you're going to sell it at the expected price point, and also too, if you're ever challenged, that's a good strategy to have. We need to be more open at telling our clients the value of getting an appraisal and why it's important and what the appraisal actually does for them as a part of their pricing strategy and marketing strategy. There was one time when it was a hard buyer's market. The only properties that were selling were the ones that actually came with appraisals. So, you know, at one time, that was the thing. I was like, hey, if you want to sell this property right now over everybody else, you need to go double down and get the appraisal, because we can say price based on appraisal. We could prove that actual quote unquote value. CMA is a part of the plan to help the clients reach real goals. We're going to try to get rid of that part about the price, the list price. The CMA doesn't give you the list price. It helps you get to the real goal of the client. Like I said, step one is start with the client. You have to ask them. You have to sit down and ask them. We have to stop showing up for a listing appointment and asking them what they want to sell their property for. That is a tiny, tiny part of the equation. And I promise you, it's probably the last thing they remember, because what the sales price is isn't their walkaway. It isn't their pain points. It doesn't help them go into that next transition of their life. So we have to double down and ask them, what is your goal? What are you going to do next? Let them answer the question. Well, we want to move to a smaller place. Awesome. Okay, so what do we need to do that? What's the timing? Do you need help relocating? It may be one of those things where they need to talk to their financial advisor. I just found out in a deal I just went through that the client's capital gains was going to be over $100,000. And I said, listen, I know you're focused on the price to sell, but you're about to lose 100 grand depending on how you go purchase the next property. Let's go talk to a 1031 exchange attorney and see what you let's position what you're buying to save you. Get a CPA involved. Probably my worst nightmare of a deal of my career was I had this beautiful property. It was just, you know, the dream properties that you just love being out there on, and they're gorgeous and all the things. We got an offer on the property. The client was ready to accept it. He talked to a CPA, and a CPA who can absolutely not accept this offer. He goes, it is October and you've made too much money this year. And if you accept this offer, you're actually going to lose a certain amount of dollars. So you actually have to, if you close on this deal, you have to close after the first of the year. Well, guess what? The buyers didn't want to wait. This CMA is not just for you or for your client, it's for you, because that depends on when you do your rollout, obviously, you know? So this part of the interview to help you with the CMA is actually going to position you for success for you as a business owner and you as a client. Okay, pulling the right data. So everybody looks at some of this data as absolute, very absolute. It's got to be A, B, B, C, C. So in some markets, the same area can be a neighborhood. In some of my markets, it's the county. I can't cross county lines. In other markets, it may be a school zone. And that's something that's really funny to me. Really knowing your geographical area and having competency is very important. And I thought it was funny because I got into a little ranchette situation, and I really never thought about school zones before. And a partner of mine in the firm was like, hey, you're in this county. This school is more, you know, this school is a big deal. So you need to see what school zone it is, and you can only price it based on the school zone because that held the desirability of the data. So I'm trying to paint this big old picture for you guys. You know, I stay away from zip codes because, you know, a zip code really doesn't factor in because of those zip code lines. You know, back in the day, that was something that we focused on. Sold months versus years. This to me is crazy because I know plenty of y'all out there, and chime in and thumbs up if you remember that you were told you only do like 3 months or you only do 6 months. Let me tell you, some of my CMAs, I go back 2 years. What if the market has stayed steady for 2 years? What if the market was volatile and it changed in 30 days? It's no longer a finite number, guys. We have to take and understand our marketplace. If you're not really good with figuring out what the market's doing right now, go talk to the lenders, talk to the title company, talk to your broker. Because sometimes that quote unquote report that you get from your marketplace, oh, here's what's sold. Sometimes that doesn't tell you what the market is doing tomorrow or give you a great projection for that. You know, everybody's talking about right now we're in a buyer's market. Actually, I see that we're transitioning out of the buyer's market. We're in the gray, potentially moving over to a more balanced, equal market. That data and knowing that is going to assist you with the part of the plan that's going to get you on the market. Looking at actives, I always think this is funny. I understand actives, but here's the thing. How many of us can say they've looked at actives and the actives are so far off? We have agents out there in your market that want the listing so bad, they'll list it at a high price. Well, do actives need to be a part of your strategy? Are actives helping your strategy? I have, more often than not, left actives and pendings off the table. Unless you call the agent up, and this is very important with pendings. You call the agent up and you get the details. Because I will tell you, one of the markets I'm servicing right now, the offer and accepted price was almost 10 to 15% lower than the list price. Because your clients are only going to look at that list price. They don't know how to evaluate this information. So if you're going to use a pending and you're going to use an active, you need to call the agent and find out what truly is going on and get that data. Because if you find out that it's priced $100,000 more or $10,000 more than it should be, that active or that pending can actually hurt your client's expectations. Eliminating bad comps. This rolls into the conversation. Pick up the phone and call the other agents, call the title company, call the lenders. Because let me tell you, when I first learned how to do a CMA, my broker never said to pick up the phone and call the other agent. Never taught me about calling the title company. Call the title company. Do you know how many deals they do that you will never see in a marketplace and an MLS? Lenders. Do you know how many deals are refinanced that don't go on the market? They're just refinanced. They keep the same owner. That's data that's out there that I said was quote unquote hidden. It's not hidden. You just got to know where to ask. And let me tell you, when you can come to a listing appointment and talk to clients and ask them, did your other agent do this or did they just pull it from the marketplace, the general public marketplace where everybody else can get this data? That'll set you apart and that'll help you win the listing. The other thing is when you deal with buyers and sellers and you say, listen, I'm not just out there scanning the internet. I'm actually picking up the phone and calling people. And I said, that's the agent you want. You want the agent that gets the real data. Anybody can go look on Zillow and see what's going on. Anybody. And how many times do buyers and sellers say, well, I can find the property for myself? This is how you overcome those obstacles. Remove the outliners. So I'm sure you guys remember we used to be told, get rid of the highest comp, get rid of the lowest comp and average the middle. No. It's got to be data-based. What was the sale? What was the outline of the sale? Did the considerations match? Let me tell you guys right now, in this market, you got to think about this. You see the price that the property sold for when you pull a comp. You need to pick up the phone and call and ask, hey, how did you finance? Did you owner finance? What considerations, what closing costs did you cover? Did you pay for the survey? Did you pay for the title commitment? Did you give concessions? Did you give closing costs? I had a situation, especially in the market we're in, the market we are in, I'll call it a buyer's market, right? And obviously lending interest rates are super high. When lending interest rates are super high in any market, if the seller can swing it, owner financing is awesome. It's the way to go. But it's if the seller can swing it, because the seller becomes the bank. The seller gets the interest rate on top of the profit of the sale. Does that make sense? If they can swing it, if they don't need the lump sum. Well, owner financing options sell very quickly in a traditional market where the interest rates are high. So I had a situation not too long ago where property had been on the market for over a year and the client's like, well, why did the neighbor's property sell? And I was like, I don't know. Let me call. Let me find out. We found out that that seller offered owner financing and that is why they sold. And for me to go to my client and say, are you willing to do owner financing based on your goals and your needs? Yeah, I'm under the impression that you need this lump sum now and you have nowhere else to move. So all those factors, that data changes the expectations and may not match the goals of the client. So that's why we have to start with goals and we have to get the word price out of our mouth. Focus on the relevant comparisons. Like, for example, if that property was owner financed, it does not apply. You know, adjusting the price per square foot, you know, that seemed to be like, you know, we would just run the average and the average per square foot. We really can't use that as a baseline. You have to go in and dive in. Let me see if I can move this bar for you guys. I apologize. Like I said, there's other factors here when you're adjusting pricing. not just usable space and layout differences, but the new CMA, you have to adjust for a buyer's concessions, closing cost, and lending options. We all know the standard property adjustments, but we really need to dive into even more than that. So, the standard is pool, garage, location, live water, access to water, what type of water. I don't know if you guys get into this, but in Texas, is it well water? Is it city utilities? Is it co-op utilities? Is it county utilities? What's the road access? In Texas, we have public roads, we have private roads, we have ranch roads, we have all different types of roads, and those roads are maintained in different ways. So going beyond that traditional CMA that we were taught long ago, and you just find 3+ houses that look identical. It's gone beyond that. Analyzing the competition. What are buyers choosing? Right now, post-settlement, post-COVID, in our quote unquote, as I'm going to call it to keep it simple, buyer's market, they're looking for buyer's concessions. They're looking for help with financing. Like I said, owner financing is a huge drive. Or, some of these houses, especially if they're new builds, the builders are offering a different type of financing. So you got to analyze your competition. And also with the financing side of things, guys, talking to your sellers. Hey, let's talk about doing a buy down. We can't compete against owner financing. We maybe can't compete against some of the closing costs being offered by these other buyers that close, or sellers that close. But let's talk to a lender ahead of time and let's put a strategy together to where we're going to offer buy down. So that helps. How does the listing compare versus price, condition, location versus closing costs covered? Because let me tell you, closing costs do matter. They do. Title commitment matters, survey matters. How much money down does that buyer have to get a loan? Right now in our market, people are struggling. So you have to consider that full picture. Pricing strategy, current market. Price versus marketed to compete. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this. Let me get through these points. Price versus marketed to attract attention. So I'm going to talk about all these together in my new philosophy and how we move forward. Avoiding price to test. So when I have a client and I lay out everything, I lay out the data and I say, here's what's sold. And they sold based on covering the following closing costs on average. And I lay out what that looks like. And based on that, I may say, hey, listen, we're really going to have to cast a wide net. We're really going to have to maybe do what's called a Zillow showcase or do a showcase marketing. You may have to take and put an ad in the newspaper. You may have to take and write up, I have a client right now who's in a market, who's in a neighborhood that's a certain price per square foot. Well, that client in the past 2 years has upgraded every feature on their home. So I had to go above and beyond and go through every feature of that home and write a marketable, updated improvement sheet to hand over with the listing. So when agents are looking at it, they're like, your house is $100,000 over what all the neighborhood houses are selling for. And I'm like, well, if you look at the comps, let me send them to you. And don't feel bad about sending a CMA or comps to another agent. You're helping them. They're on your team, right? Whether you know it or not, the buyer's agent is on your team because they have to convince the buyer and prove to the buyer in their CMA that this is a fair offer price, right? So if you say, hey, I pulled these, you can see that they're outdated and they haven't been updated since 2000. My client has done 22 upgrades to major portions of their home between 2024 and 2026. And that way I can take and justify our price point based on tangible updates to the client. So that's a part of my marketing strategy. Also, too, that helped me having that interview with that client, your goals. We deserve a higher price because, Lindsay, here is what we've done. How many times have you walked into a place and actually paid attention? When's the last time you got a new roof? When's the last time you replaced the garage doors? Um, I see that your screen and porch looks really new and beautiful. What updates have you done then? You really got to get boots on the ground. And that's also something that is very important to a CMA. Before you give them a price, you have to put your feet on the property, because other agents in my particular scenario, in a listing, the listing that I'm talking about, that is actually $100,000 over the average comps in their market. I went in and I saw all the upgrades. I saw the $100,000+ worth of work. The other agents that showed up to the table, they just pulled the standard CMA and they walked in and told their clients, well, your property is only worth, for example, your property is only worth, based on the comps, based on the Zillow estimate, it looks like it's only worth, $520. Well, because I walked in the door first and I said, listen, I can't give you a price until I know your goals and I know what we're selling, I was able to come back and say, listen, you're not crazy. We actually can justify this price. We can put a proper marketing strategy together for you. We're going to do advanced marketing because your house is closer to a luxury level house versus, just a standard home, because you're in that price point. And then it also helped me market and adjust to more of a luxury market, so that attracting attention. What type of marketing do you need to do? Did I need to pay for advanced photography? And the one statement that I learned from actually a commercial agent, he said, Lindsay, we have to remind our clients that the world of technology has changed. You cannot, and you should not, put a price out there to test. Just throw a price out there, because here's the problem now. We're in a new world where data is stamped and public. If your client decides, hey, Mr. Seller, if you decide to list this property at this price, that strategy is publicly out there. Everybody's going to see that the agent and the seller made a decision to overprice the property. Now that gets people to assume, are they serious? Do they have a bad agent that doesn't know the market? Those assumptions are going to damage your reputation and damage the home. And then what happens? We all know it sits on the market. I truly believe that majority of sellers do not understand that people can see the public first original price. And I think if you guys, what I actually have done is I've actually taken screenshots of Zillow where it says starting price, and you see that chart. And I said, if you were buying, doesn't this look like the seller's being inconsistent? Doesn't it look like something's wrong with the property? I said, the assumptions will kill you. So knowing that, and bringing to light to a seller that the price you choose will follow you in the history of your property, that really makes them stop and think, do I want to play test with the market? Connecting your CMA to a net sheet. So this is where the data actually gets outlined to reach their goals. So you have your CMA. So you pull your comps. So when I say you have your CMA, you pulled your comps. You found 3 to 10 solid sold comparables that are in line with your client's goals. So I found solid comp. I found out that the sellers were offering closing costs. For example, the closing costs would cover a survey if there wasn't one. It would cover the title commitment, and 10%, $10,000 closing, or it covered buyer's agent commission. So say that's what we found, right? You're going to put that in your net sheet. So you're going to say the average sales price based on these scenarios was $350,000. We're going to put $350,000 in the net sheet. Now to that net sheet, we are going to put in what the considerations were. So that's when you're going to put in the survey was $2,000. The buyer's commission, you covered it. It was 2%. They were covering 2% on the buyer's commission. So we're going to put a line for buyer's commission. We're going to put a line for your seller's commission. And if you want to break it down even farther, you can put a line for your marketing. Put a line for your closing costs, and then obviously there's going to be lines for what the closing costs are the seller with the title company. So I try to position more closing costs than fees, because at the end of the day, it all comes out of the bottom line. It is the total closing costs. So what they do is they now see, based on everything needed to sell, not just the starting price, but based on everything that was needed for the buyer to say yes, this is going to be their estimated walk away in the time frame. Mind you, in the time frame. They say we got to sell in 30 days. That price is going to be a lot different than we can sell in 60 or 90, right? So going back, also factoring in the time frame, time on the market. And time on the market is also cost to you. And that's something we're going to talk about at the end in our private Q&A. Price reductions. I normally do a few net sheets because my clients are normally still stuck on that high price, right, guys? So what I normally do, and I'm like, listen, here's the scenario you're looking for. And this is what the considerations need to be. So I put those considerations because let's face it, guys, right now you're going to have them. You're going to have seller cover closing costs. I've yet to see one, at least in my market. So if that's the case, you got to put it in there, even if it's on the high number, because that's going to set the expectation to the client. If you sell at the high number, you're still going to have the buyer's expectation of these closing costs. And then what I say, I said, listen, this is your sale price. I said, based on everything, this is the estimated and projected sale price that buyers are really coming at. So I need you to look at this. So you need to print both those sheets out and you need to put it in front of them. So you're setting expectations, because it's a lot easier to go back and they go, you told us that this might happen, and they were already prepped for it, and they may not have been okay with it, but at least they had time to think about it. The other thing is too, if these clients are being extremely unrealistic, it helps you to know when to walk away, when to protect your business, and how to protect your reputation. Because let me tell you something, guys, there is nothing worse if you're a new agent. I know you're hungry, I know you're starving, but let me tell you what happens. These seasoned agents with real buyers watch you. It's a pattern. Everything you do is they can see that you've priced it too high. They can see, in the marketplace that you have all these listings. Oh, Jana's killing it. She's got 20 listings. Well, Jana ain't selling nothing. Jana's broke. Jana had to put out 3 or 4 credit cards to pay for photography, to pay her, dues and to pay her association fees. Jana went out of business because Jana didn't set the expectation and didn't know when to walk away. Protecting your business and reputation is huge. And knowing when to say no. And it's okay to say no. And you know what? I've had clients respect me. They're like, you know what? Exactly what you told me what happened, Lindsey, happened to me. The other thing I like to tell them is, listen, I know you have 2 or 3 agents telling you can list it at this price. I said, I want to know this. I want to know how, having the same data that I showed you, they believe you can get more. I said, I am not going to mislead you. I'm giving you the facts. So I want you to think about that, Mr. Seller. We have the same access to marketing. We have the access to the same data. And I said, we're giving you the same numbers. I said, I want to know, how can they do that? I was like, I am not going to mislead you. And I've had a lot of clients say, you know what? I never thought about it that way. You're using the same data they're using, but they're promising us the moon. I said, I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you the facts of the market, because my job is to guide you. I'm not the bad guy. I'm not here to tell you your baby's ugly. I'm here to tell you what the market's doing. And you know what? if you need to wait till there's a better market, then let's wait. That let's not damage the property's reputation, quote unquote, online if you can wait. And I've had clients come back to me and say, you know what? We waited a year and you were right, Lindsey. The interest rates weren't good, market wasn't good, and we didn't have to sell. And I was like, that's great, because guess what? That timestamp of data we talked about didn't follow them. Closing costs and commission strategies. I know we talked about this quite a bit, but I want to hammer it home because it's not something you guys were taught. And I wasn't taught. I wasn't taught to look at sellers' concessions, buyers' concessions, closing costs, agent costs, marketing versus time versus tools. You know, the commission of the seller's agent covers marketing. And those costs may be a lot different for an agent that's doing $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 worth of marketing. So, you know, I'm talking to all divisions right now, not just residential. But when you go into marketing a ranch or marketing a commercial business, we're looking at a time frame of potentially 2 years on a market. So how much does it cost us, the client and myself? How much does it cost us in that marketing strategy? Am I going to pay for a $2,000 billboard sign? We're dealing with that right now with one of my listings. We're analyzing the agreement that the client and I have based on the permanent signage we're going to be putting out on this property. So all of these factors actually come when you start breaking down the CMA. Presenting the CMA to the sellers, the biggest thing is to keep it simple, and I'm going to show you some tactics. We're going to go off of Twitch here shortly for you guys listening publicly. The private strategies and some of the private information, you know, is tight vested to our agents. We're going to go offline here in one moment once I get through this. And I'm going to share some AI tools. I'm going to share some tactics and some teaching points that are not for the general public. But for those out there listening, if you'd like to be a part of our coaching, say you're not a member of our team, but you'd like to be a part of these trainings and coaching on the back end, we do offer memberships and services where you can come and pay to be a part of this training. If you're not a team member, and if you'd like to be a team member and join My Real Estate Company or My Real Estate Company 2, we have a lot to offer when it comes to strategy and setting you into a pathway to success bigger than you are right now. You know, that's really where we want to position our agents to be the best at their job based on the market, and to have those upfront strategies and tactics to win for their clients and to win for their business. So presenting to sellers, keep it simple. I'm going to show you some tools, including some AI tools that I use here in a minute. Showing the competition clearly. So making sure you have that outline and saying, hey, Joe Blow down the street is $50,000 overpriced. I actually called the agent. They ran a CMA, but they're going to run with it. Well, Joe Blow is sat on the market for 180 days. Do you want to wait 180 days? Absolutely. My goal as a seller is not to. And then focus on the outcome, focus on the net. If we can get away from the sticker price versus the goal price, the net price, that's going to have more of a successful path for you. And we all know these guys, common mistakes are overpricing, using comps without verifying the data, ignoring the true outline of active competition and verifying that data, skipping the net sheet to just get an agreed upon strategy, and not looking at those concessions or closing costs. Final takeaways before we go off Twitch. Mind you, we're just going to go off Twitch real quick, and I'm going to show you some back knowledge stuff. Final takeaways: a CMA equals a strategy, not an MLS report. We price to compete and negotiate. We protect the seller's expectations with the CMA, along with the net sheet and the other marketing tools out there.